Good evening. Planning Board is now in session. First item on the agenda, major site plan review, replacement of Choate playing field lights. Application is the Southborough Recreation. Mr. Jenks.
Mr. Chairman, as I am in a butter to the property, I will recuse myself.
I'll read the public hearing notice. Per section 17410 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough will hold a public hearing on Monday, January 25th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. To consider the application of Southborough Recreation Commission, Doreen Ferguson, Recreation Director, for major site plan approval. The hearing is for the request to install 7 new light poles, 60 to 80 feet, at Choate Field, 28 Corderville Road, Southborough. A copy of the plan and application can be viewed in the planning office, Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, during normal business hours, and an electronic copy can be found on the Town of Southborough website, southboroughtown.com, Planning Board page. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed application and plan should appear at the time and place designated. Signed by myself, Chairman, Southborough Planning Board. Doreen, grab a mic and we'll get started. Good evening.
Good evening. Is this on? Okay.
Yep.
So tonight I have with me Brian Schifrin from the Rec Commission, Karen Galligan, DPW Superintendent, and Mike Berry from Musco Lighting. So, as you said, we're here to look at replacing the lights over at Choate Field. I brought, you have the specific design plans and electrical engineering and all that, but I did bring a bigger visual that is more simplified. So
Hold on. Yeah, you gotta grab a mic.
Okay.
Do you,
That comes out. Yeah.
can you see that, Terry? Okay.
Okay. So currently, where the white dots are located are where we have existing poles. Not all the poles have lights. Some
Could you point
used
to the school? That's Woodward.
This is a school. This is Route 85.
Okay.
Can you still hear me? So these are the existing lights that we have in place. And we're looking to replace these poles here with the Musco system and adding an additional pole right here. And the Musco system is it's state-of-the-art. It's used everywhere in the country. I spoke with Shrewsbury quite a bit about it, and Worcester, and it's very well-known, very, very good system. So the poles that are currently in there were put in about 1970, I believe. And we are now down to 5 poles because one of the poles fell in a bad storm. So we're looking to put in 7 poles altogether. The ones that are currently in there are about 60 to 65 feet tall already. The poles we're looking to put in are from 60 to 80 feet tall. The reason for the height is so that we can illuminate all of this section in here. Right now there's a lot of blackout spots in there because the lights are inefficient. So that's the reason for the height of the pole. The other nice thing about the Musco system is that you can control the on and off remotely. And you can set up the times at any time you want them to turn on and any time you want them to turn off via the web, or if you're not near the web or anything or a computer, you can call Musco and they can turn them off for you. So if there's an emergency. Currently, all we have now is a little light switch that you flip on and off. And the lights tend to either get left on, or if I happen to be driving by late at night and nobody's out there, I'll turn them off. But it's not efficient for them to stay on when the facility's not in use. We'll also be lighting this basketball court here, which is highly used by a lot of people. And for that court, we'll have a push button system. And we can control how long those will stay on and turn off automatically as well. Over here, where there's existing poles, we're going to replace a couple of these poles with new poles. And we're going to take some of the lights from over here and install them on the poles over here. So we're gonna try and repurpose and save some money and light up this section over here where we also have soccer, and we also usually put our ice skating rink over there, so it'll help there. And we'll also have a mechanism in place that will turn those off and on automatically as well. So I think that's the broader picture. If you have any specific questions about the products that we're using, Musco or anything like that, we can answer them.
Can you please put it on the easel and have it face us a little bit, but make sure that the people in the seats can see it? And then, Doreen, could you take the mic over there
Okay.
and just recap a little bit? You know, point to the ones that how you're going to move the lights, and the ones that are going to go to 60 and 80 feet, so on.
Why don't you hold that? Okay.
This is the newer and better one.
Bring in my own next time.
The,
Microphone.
currently, the lights are on a pole that's about 65 feet, with the lights being at 60 feet. And this pole here is the only one that goes to 80 feet. The current existing pole is actually in the middle of the field, so moving that out of the kind of middle of the field needed to be higher. These poles here will be removed and won't be replaced. They will be lit from these poles, this area. These will be 40-foot new wood poles with repurposed lights from the existing project. This pole has 3 lights on it for the basketball court and will be completely removed. This pole here will light the field and the basketball court. And this area down here is currently dark. You can see it's about a third of a soccer field, and that'll be completely lit. The other poles in here are between 60 to 70 feet, depending on the pole. Currently, the poles on the field have 5 to 6 lights on them each. In the new plan, I think it's 2 or 3 cans because of the new technology and stuff like that.
Can you show us what the lights look like?
New ones?
Yeah, we have it.
This one's on, right? All right.
And there's actually 4 existing lights there now, whether we replaced from the pole that fell down. That is the new design that he's going to show you, if anybody wanted to see it.
Hi. All right. Sorry. So the technology that we'll be using is our light structure green technology. It is, as Brian said, currently up on a temporary pole to illuminate softball, just to fill in so they can get through this season before we did this project. It's a precast concrete base that sets in the ground. There's a galvanized steel pole that goes over the precast base, and then the fixtures are anywhere, as we said, between 60, 70, and 80 feet in the air. The ballast boxes, which is your components, your electrical components for the fixture, will be located 10 feet above grade for easy service down the road in terms of maintenance, things like that. The only thing at the top of the pole is the lamps themselves. They're all pre-wired, pre-aimed in the factory based on where that pole is in relation to home plate. So we know where those lights are aimed to in order to light the field properly to the light levels that we have proposed. To show you kind of a cross-section of the fixture, unlike what you have currently at the softball field, they're just spun aluminum fixtures with no visors, no glare protection. These will have visors, again, to minimize the impact to the environment and to reduce the spill off the field. All the light that comes out of that lamp is directed back down on the playing surface. Sorry, Doreen, bouncing around. You can see this is a close-up picture of one of the fixtures. You can see the internals of the fixture, all these different reflectors. There's 2,000 different reflector types. Each one is custom made for that fixture based on where that pole is and where we need to direct that light. All these little reflectors are doing is directing the light that comes out of that side of that lamp back down on the playing surface. These diffusers here are there to reduce the glare that comes out of the bottom of the fixture. This shows you the length of the visor that we'd use for softball, baseball, because for softball and baseball, you do need a little bit of uplight for pop flies and such, so they can track it above the poles. So unlike what you see here, this would be something we'd use for specifically soccer, where everything's played below the poles. So it's a little bit shorter of a visor, but they do have visors on all the fixtures for this application as well. It's the only way we make them is with visors. This kind of walks you through the evolution that we've gone through over the past 30-something years to the old school technology, like in 1976, when you said these were similar to when these were put in. Again, these diffusers were done to reduce the glare, visors to reduce the sky glow effect, to where we are now with light structure green, again, to try and minimize the impact. So that's kind of a run through on what the technology is that we have out there that we're proposing.
Mrs. Bartolini.
I understand all the, no, I won't claim to understand the electrical for all 2,000 different kinds of
Sure.
flare here, but can you discuss how the additional lighting and the placement of that lighting will keep the light within the current fields, or will it have an impact upon abutting properties? I'm assuming it improves the existing condition as opposed to making it worse, but
Definitely.
rather than taking my word for it.
We haven't added any additional fixtures. With this technology, we're able to light an athletic field with less fixtures than the prior technology, because we're using more of that light that comes out of that lamp and directing it onto the playing surface. The old technology where I showed you, it was just turn them on, blast them out there, and hope you get enough on the field, and if
It
not, we
didn't
add a
in the
few more
outfield.
lights. So the technology, yes, allows us to reduce the number of fixtures. We are pretty comparable in terms of the number of fixtures, because again, we're adding basketball, we've stretched to add more soccer on both ends. So the total energy consumption is about the exact same as it is now, because we're lighting a larger area besides just softball. The impact would be less.
All right, I'm done.
Mr. Stein.
Doreen, can we go back to the illustration there? So there's a yellow octagon, I believe it is, that's next to a currently existing pole. Why do we have to put a new installation so close to an existing pole?
We might have misspoke. The octagon is the temporary.
Need a mic.
And Mike,
Sorry about that. The octagon is a temporary pole at the site where an existing pole snapped off the base. This dot is a proposed pole that will light both this way and this way.
So the octagon is gone after the project.
After the project, the octagon will still be there.
Why would we keep a temporary pole?
Well, it'll be,
Project.
it will be a,
A misunderstanding.
at this site will be a permanently installed aluminum pole from Musco. So this infield area is lit by, these should be more proportional. These should look the same. So 2 poles on the infield area this side, and 2 poles on the infield area on this side. And this pole will light both this field and this field. These existing poles will be removed. There'll be nothing there. This one pole will be the one higher pole to light both this way and this way.
What about those two on the top there?
These will be new wood poles that will be shorter, around 40 feet. And then the repurposed cans or lights that are here will be put on these poles to light this end of the field.
So net, we're adding,
Net,
net it comes out the same, right?
3 less poles.
Three
net.
fewer poles.
3
net.
fewer poles. This will be removed. This is a basketball court pole and won't be replaced. And these 2 will be removed and won't be replaced. This one is, this one, and these will be new poles, new aluminum poles.
So I like the fact that we're net losing
Yes.
poles.
It'll be cleaned up, less poles, and he said about the same amount of lights,
My
cans.
one concern I have was with repurposing like the old lights, because these new fixtures sound like they're much more effective at containing the light down onto the playing surface and not spilling out
Yeah.
into whatever. So can we talk about that a little bit and how?
Yeah, we we tried to maximize the budget as best we could with what we had to work with. So, in working with Brian and Doreen, we had various revisions to pole locations to try and, again, light as much of this as we could with as few poles as we could. So we're lighting half of that smaller soccer field off of these 2 poles here, aiming back this way. But without having to, you couldn't do the whole field without adding another 2 poles. Again, we were trying to stretch as much as we could with what we had to work with for budget.
Okay, that's fair enough. But so can you hold that up again? When we're repurposing, because it seems to me like the repurposed poles will have more spill out. So is there a way to make sure that those are in positioned so that they're not going to impact the abutters or mitigate the impact to abutters?
They'll be aimed appropriately so that it's less spillage.
So the ones on the perimeter will be the new, improved, focused projecting.
Yeah, those are the 40-foot ones with the repurposed.
Well,
These
yeah,
are-
It'll be shorter, so the spillage won't be as broad as it is now
Right.
out there. Right?
Yeah. The requirement on the nipper field that we, as we call it, which is just a small 6v6, 8v8 field, the light level that's required is very low because it's not very competitive sport. And majority of that is being lit from these 2 poles here, aimed back that way. So really all they're trying to do with these 2 poles is add a few fixtures just to balance out the amount of light so that the ball has lighting on all 4 sides. If you only lit it from here,
So those lights are gonna be.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, I can see that there's 2 private residences located near the 2 new, right. I'm just concerned how the increased spill, because we're repurposing the old lights, and so it's adding illumination where there wasn't before.
Right now, and they're on shorter poles.
And there also at one time these are existing pole locations, and these had lights on them at one point, and really were only removed because the electrical went over the field, and that electrical over the field came down. So there was a time when there were old lights illuminating the field this way. The poles are still there. The lights were removed when the electrical came down. So it was there at one point. These lights face this way. No, I don't think anything we've proposed could possibly have any more impact on abutters than what's already there.
And that field's lit, I can see it from Route 9. That's when I'm coming home, I know I have to go by. If it's really late, I have to shut them off because somebody left them on, because you can see the glow.
So do you want to talk more about the controlling portion of it?
I don't know,
Yeah.
did you have any questions about the control of the lighting?
I do, in the sense that this eliminates your need at 10 o'clock to be checking if anyone's done this. But also, to what extent does the new system versus the old system, even the push button at the basketball, which sounds fairly easy to turn it on at 2 a.m. or something like that. So how does that get controlled in the sense of who's doing it and nobody else can, especially at the wee hours of the morning?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. The way the ControlLink system works is it's a web-based system. Inside of our contactor cabinet, you'll have a cell phone system built into it for two-way communication. It works so that Musco can monitor how the lights are performing, if they're all working properly, the hours of usage on the lamp. This system comes with a 25-year warranty, which means Musco maintains it for 25 years. That includes relamps, outages, things like that that could go wrong with it. But what that allows Doreen to do is to program the hours of usage. So for your question on basketball, she would program it, say, sunset to 9 o'clock, or whatever the hours are that you want to set. They can't physically turn those lights on by pushing the button at any hour they want, only during that 6 to 9 slot that she's given it permission to turn on. So when they push the push button, they'll program it, say, to play for an hour, and then they'll shut off again. So it's a way just so that the lights aren't always on for basketball. They're only there if, they only turn on if somebody's there to push it. And the same for softball. There won't be push buttons, but they'll have to schedule when they have games, when they want to use the lights, and what the hours are. So you have a gatekeeper that dictates the hours of usage, and then she can set out different levels of ability beyond that if she wants to give other people the ability to schedule or delete schedules, things like that.
All set. Can I ask, Karen, why are you here? You're always welcome, but I don't see your piece of this. Can you tell us what DPW has?
The DPW is basically the fields and field maintenance and amenities are DPW, so just in case there was a question about that end of it.
Thank you. If there's no more questions from the board, I'll open it up to the public. Anybody? Yes, sir. Come forward and grab a mic.
Hi, I'm Steve Phillips, 26 Main Street. I'm a direct abutter to, my wife and I are direct abutters to the north of this project. I'd like to say, I know, speaking for both my wife and myself, we support the general goal here. You know, we like to see the athletic facilities get used, and so we're certainly all in favor of making them more playable. There's just a few concerns. I mean, I'm hearing some positive things, which I'm glad to hear. But you know, I just wanted to mention what the issues are. You know, right now we've been kind of suffering silently with a major light pollution, you know, situation over there. I remember when they first redid Woodward, there was a giant Klieg light shining directly at my property. You know, it was like lit up like daytime, and they used to try to enforce a 10 o'clock shut off for that, but I think that must have been the light that fell down or something, but you know, it's definitely a little better. But we have a lot of stray light coming off the field, and you know, both in sky glow and in sort of direct light that's just, you know, aimed, you know. So I certainly hope that whatever we do would be an improvement to this, and B, that we not just say, well, the fact that it's a little better than what's currently there, you know, I hope we set the bar a little higher than that, because I think that this is hopefully an opportunity to, as we improve the light, to maybe look at, you know, to make sure that we don't make the problem worse. You know, it sounds like the timer issue is going to be, you know, right now there's really no time control on the lights at all. So most of the time they get shut off, but sometimes people will leave in their cars and the lights are on at 2 in the morning. You know, I can't speak for other neighbors, but I know my whole backyard is lit up at 2 in the morning a lot of the time because of that. And so I think the timers would help in that sense. I guess I had the same concern about repurposing cans that Mr. Stein expressed. It seems like we're extending the project, that the less efficient lighting is going to be to the north there, where it's going to be, I mean, that's where whatever abutters are there are either on the west side of 85 over there, or to the north where you have the community house and my house and a few others. And so I'm a little bit concerned that we seem to be using the least efficient lighting in the place where it has the potential to, I mean, I can sit in my back room and look right down and, you know, I'm looking at the field and the ice rink and that kind of thing. And so I guess what I would really ask is that we do everything we can to mitigate both sky glow from this system and direct lighting coming off the property. As you just mentioned, I mean, you can see the sky glow all the way on Route 9. I mean, when this thing is going, you know, the whole sky is lit up. I think that if we have new technology that allows us to mitigate that and direct the light downwards, that I would hope we could use that everywhere possible and rather than kind of taking the old stuff that's causing the problems now and reshuffling it to other parts of the project. So I think that's really all I have. I support the goal. I think it's a great goal, but I think with today's technology, we really ought to be able to put this light where it belongs, which is on these playing fields, you know, and not on the neighboring properties and straying off the edges. And then also just to say, you know, whatever, hopefully all of these lights, all of the lights that are here can all be timer based so that we don't have, you know, so that we can deal with the time issues as well.
Can the repurposed lights have new visors put on?
I don't know.
I think that's actually not significant to the overall project. We can put Musco lights on a wood pole,
Sure.
right? So I didn't really think about, you know, the old lights pointing this way to these houses. So we could actually put new Musco lights on a 40-foot pole here, and that would be soccer only. So those could be full-size shields that would direct the light completely down on the field and would get the least amount of spill possible.
Mr. Phillips lives on Main Street, not Route 85, so his concern is the spillage up to Main Street.
Oh, so probably this one here?
What we tend to see is that anything that's pointed north comes our way, but I know the other abutters are to the west, and really the west and north, I think, are the abutters that, I don't know if this goes all the way over to Lattisquama, whether they have issues, with, I think the school is probably enough of a blocker,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I would guess that west and north is the most affected, northwest and north. But I appreciate all the hard work and just hope that you folks can put every effort to really to mitigate the light pollution and sky glow and keep it on the field. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Stein?
How
Yes,
close, so the yellow octagon and that other one, how close are those two poles together?
We have an actual layout. So these are the proposed poles.
You need a mic if you're gonna.
Between A2 and B2, they are about 100 feet apart.
Okay.
Because this is 35 from up the line from home plate, and this is 125. And again, the idea was we originally had it back here, but then we wanted to tuck it back so that you have this open green space. So this is normally a little bit further up on our ideal location, but we pushed it back here so that we could get as much use out of this open area as possible.
Yeah, I did. So, and Brian, the repurposed lights then are gonna be moved down south, basically, and
The repurposed lights, we planned on only using on these two
won't now
poles.
because of what we just discussed.
And I think we should be able to get new Musco lights with covers on these poles. And then there wouldn't be any,
So can you show where the repurposed ones would be?
there wouldn't be any repurpose then if we did that.
We're done
They'd be
with
gifts to
repurposed.
the DPW?
They certainly could be used at other locations, tennis courts, playgrounds, whatever. The lights themselves, the cans were refurbished, I want to say 3 years ago. The bulbs and some of the electronics in there, so they should be, able to be used elsewhere.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jared Bozan. I'm on the Southborough Soccer Board, and I'm also the field director for Southborough Soccer. And I just want to say we completely support the project, and the repurposed side where the field is actually very vital to us. We have practices there 5 days a week, every day. In the fall, we basically practice in the pitch dark over there, and that is something that we greatly need. Also for makeup games on all these fields in the fall, we cannot do any of them unless we have lights over there. And now for our 10 and 11-year-olds, it's almost impossible to do any makeup games during the week. So it's really important to have those lights over there. And the rest of it's a great help to us. We have playoff games in the springtime there that we need lights for. We have a great relationship with the softball league, and we just want to say we completely support the project. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Jenks.
Phil Jenks, 5 Lattisquama Road. I want to make it very clear, I am on the planning board. I have recused myself, so I will not have input or voting on this item. And I did, albeit on another project, check with the State Ethics Commission, and they told me that it was no problem to speak as a private citizen as long as I made that clear. That said, a couple questions. Could you just point to the tallest of the light poles, the new ones?
It'll be this one on 80, right on 85,
And the elevation of that is 80?
80 feet.
And what is the elevation of the roof of the Woodward School?
I don't know that.
I knew something would come up.
Microphone.
My reason for asking is the school sits on land that is higher than the
Yeah,
fields.
It does.
And the properties on Lattisquama sit on land that is higher than that. My question is, are we going to be staring at the light source from our windows?
Just from my various site visits, I would say that the school, the roof is much taller than 80-foot mounting height that we would have with the elevation that the school has. And then, I don't know, how many stories that school is, but
2.
with the visors, if you're elevated above the fixtures, all you see, the idea behind the visors is that you're going to see more of that visor than you will that light source. Are you going to not through the school? I don't see that happening.
I'm not concerned about through the school, I'm concerned about over the
The roof?
school. We
Yeah.
see over the roof now.
You see the glow, or do you see the fixtures right now?
We see trees and things, we are higher than the roof, than that roof line.
Okay. Without knowing the exact elevations, the idea is that with the visors is that it's there to minimize that direct source of light, which is the lamp itself.
It's the light source
Yep.
that I'm
Yep,
concerned
understandable.
about, not the disbursement.
Yeah, and I don't know the orientation of your house in relation to that pole, but this C1 pole, I think you're referring to, so your house is,
Yeah, it's, yeah, I think it's on that picture. The backyard, that's it there.
Okay. So, this one here.
yeah, so C1's going to be located here and aimed in this vicinity and then that direction. The reason this one's so tall is that it's throwing light out into this area in between these poles. You You're not going to have anything aimed back towards your line of sight. There's nothing that's going to be aimed straight back towards home plate. It's going to be aimed in this direction and again this direction. These fixtures will be aimed this way. These ones will be aimed in these various directions. Your line of sight, it might be this one, but I believe we have that one only on for soccer, if I think, because that's in a glare zone for
Well, the
softball.
problem with that is that that's the plan today. That may not be the plan a year from now.
Well-
These things change. I mean, you say it's only on for soccer, and it's only on for soccer on today's plan. Next year, it may be different.
Well, from a playability standpoint, we design our lighting system around what the sport is that you're going to play. And from a batter's position and a catcher, you cannot have a pole direct line of sight because it creates a glare source so you can't see the ball. So that's why that one's on a different zone, as we call it, so that it's not on when softball's playing.
What's the height of this one?
That is S1 70.
So that would only be 10 feet higher than the existing lights now.
And that one on the 80-foot pole has a shield on it?
Every fixture we make has a shield.
And how much of the actual light source does the shield cover?
Really depends on your location in relation to the pole itself.
I suppose if I were
Yeah,
directly above it, it would be 100%.
100%, correct.
Um,
Yeah, I
would-
mean,
Would it be unreasonable for me to ask that you check the height of the Woodward School? I'm sure it's on the plans. And just find out if that is something we are, and our neighbors are going to be looking at? That's my question.
You say that you're going to, oh, is there anyone else that wanted to speak? You say that you're going to maintain these lights for 25 years? Virtually any site plan that we have in town, and the most recent one was the New England School for Children over on, in Fayetteville. They installed a new or expanded parking lot with LED parking lot lights. And with that site plan and virtually all the site plans that we've done over the years, we put a one-year agreement with the site plan to revisit the lights regardless of what the site plan is, whether they're small walkway lights, parking lot lights, big poles, small poles. We always have a condition where what you say is looked at and approved, but if when it's actually built and it becomes a problem, then you will have agreed to come back and adjust it. Now, most recently, the New England School for Children lights that they installed were adjusted. They came back after the leaves fell, and we could see that there was significant light spillage to the neighbors, and the light source was very bright and visible to the neighbors. And they put in some back shields to solve the problem. So if Mr. Jenks, Mr. Phillips, and the other neighbors, after 1 year of, the trees and all of that, if they come back and say, no, this light over here is a problem, would you be able to make adjustments?
yeah, the way the projects typically work is once it's installed, I come out and do a light level test to confirm that the readings on the field are as promised, and any issues of that nature would be addressed at that point as well. If we've done fine tunes at other projects where you've got one fixture that seems to be out of whack with the rest of them, then yes, we have done that in numerous situations.
I think what the board might be looking for, though, is if after you do your measurements and you say, this is exactly the way it should be for the sports to be played here, but it's still a problem for the neighbors, then I think the board would be expecting you to compromise the light on the field in order to accommodate the neighbors.
And that's the conversation I have on any one of these where you've got a butter that has an issue with a certain fixture, is that it's being the good neighbor and finding that happy medium where you're not impacting the light level drastically, but appeasing the neighbors so that everybody is happy. So yes, that's a common practice that you kind of give and take on it.
Having understood where you're going, Mr. Morris, and not wanting to be back here in a year, dealing with that, would it not be more appropriate, once the site plan is reviewed and approved, that the 3-month, 6-month, whatever, 1-year review and meeting of the neighbors be before the Recreation Commission, as opposed to having to come back to the planning board?
Sure, we could do it that way.
It's laid out in our warranty that we do fine tunes, so it's covered in there. But certainly, we'd want to address it before a year's out, but
Well,
No, whatever.
the reason I was thinking of a year, having heard it come up in the discussion, is that it's a multi-use field of different sports.
Sure.
So you're gonna have ice skating versus softball versus soccer, so you have to kind of know if different lights are gonna be on different fields, or 2 fields, 3 fields are being used at once, how that changes during the year. So I guess the review should occur before the Recreation Commission, after a full usage of all sports.
makes sense.
We just want to make sure that the neighbors, going back to what you said, Kathy, that the neighbors know who to call to request adjustments, and that whoever they call is responsible and cooperative. So if it's the rec department, we know that they have an excellent reputation for that type of thing, so we could do it that way. Are there any other questions or comments? Does the board feel we have enough information to
I'm ready.
Jesse? Mrs. Bartolini?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Southborough Planning Board approve the major site plan filed by the Southborough Recreation Department and as amended this evening at our hearing, whereby there will be no reuse of the existing less efficient lights, and that after full use by all sporting activities on the field, there will be a review by the Recreation Commission with the abutters to determine that the lights functioned as presented this evening.
Second.
The way you worded that, it sounded like a mandatory review with the rec department. If no one calls after a year, is that, or are you saying that the rec department in a year will hold a meeting?
All right, and
Either way, just want to make.
that after full use of the fields, the planning board recommends to the Recreation Commission that they meet with the neighbors if complaints have been filed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Before we take that vote, we should probably close the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the hearing before us.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Anybody else want to speak before we close the public hearing? All in favor? All right. And now the motion for approval, which was already made. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion?
I just have one
Mr.
discussion point. So are we making it conditional? We're making it conditional on the review. But at that point, if the review's by the rec department, mitigation is going to be under their control, correct? If any,
Maybe we
if
should,
there's
their
an
business.
elevation,
maybe we should make it as a condition that if that meeting, or if any adjustments are triggered by complaints or requests, that the rec department notify the town planner, so that we're aware of it, and then allow them to resolve it. And if it doesn't get resolved, then we'll get involved.
Mr. Chairman, I made it, my original motion, as a condition, and you had me amend the motion to make it as a recommendation.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the same
Well,
thing.
that's,
And our discussion
no,
has,
it's not.
our
The only
discussion
thing
has
I
produced a
inserted
different.
was that
result.
if that occurs, is to notify the town planner.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Did you get that?
Clear, Destiny? Motion's been made and seconded and thoroughly discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the A&R Mount Vickery Road for Curtis. Is anyone here for, oh, yeah, okay.
I
Yep.
saw him.
The record should show that Mr. Jenks has returned to the planning board. Good evening, Mr. Curtis.
Hello.
Tell us who you are, and we know what you're here for. I have the A&R right here.
Perfect. So I am Greg Curtis, and I represent my family. My mom owns all this land here, and we are here to present this A&R plan to create 2 lots where there is currently 1 lot. You guys are probably familiar with me and what we're trying to do, because we've been here a few times before.
Since other people are watching on TV who may not have had the privilege of being with you 2 or 3 times already on this, why don't you give us a quick summary so that the general public knows what we're trying to do?
Sure. So just last year, I bought a small piece of land from neighbors, which you can kind of identify on that, on the survey there. And it was basically in between our lot and the roadway, Vickery Hill Lane. You can see there's a dashed line for the drainage easement, which is pretty much the piece of property, with the exception of that small little bit where, you know. So anyway, we bought the frontage on Vickery Hill so that we could meet all the requirements here for frontage for 2 lots. And that's, you know, we're basically just trying to create 2 lots. One of them would be on Vickery Hill Lane, and the current house would remain as it is.
Mr. Stein, any questions?
Could you step up and
Oh,
just draw up, maybe outline with your finger, just to reiterate?
Oh, yeah. So this right here and this dashed line, this used to be our neighbor's lot and, or, you know, piece of their lot, and then we bought this section here. So that's gonna be our frontage onto Vickery Hill Lane, which was a subdivision.
And where's your existing lot?
Right here, it's this whole lot in the bold.
These are 2 lots.
It will be 2 lots.
It will be.
Yes.
Okay.
Currently, everything in the bold is 1 lot, and then the proposal is a second lot in the back with a proper division there.
So what's your purpose in doing this?
Oh, the idea is being able to create a buildable lot here so that I will be able to build a house here.
Because it says existing building. right? So there is a dwelling there currently,
It's not a house, this is a barn and a garage here.
which is associated with this structure.
Yes, yes.
So this is gonna go.
No,
Well, it's there now, and, yeah, my plan as of right now is to remove probably the front half of this garage and build here with the garage being in the back.
wouldn't have to go.
Are we ready for a motion?
Mrs. Bartolini, anything? Mrs. Bartolini?
I make a motion that we approve the A&R plan before us this evening for Vickery Hill Lane, presented by Mr. Curtis.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Mr. Curtis, we're gonna sign these toward the end of the night, and we keep them until Hillary logs them in.
Okay.
Can I sign mine?
Yeah, if we got pens,
Oh, yes.
let's do it right now.
Yep. You wanna do it now? Okay.
Yeah, they're all spread out. It's-
I won't hold you guys up.
No, well, the reason I want to sign it now is that I'm going to be recusing later, so.
we just use regular pens or?
I think we're probably can on the prints. 1, 2, and the third one.
You done? Okay, someone else need one?
Here's, Jesse, once you start the, Form A.
Why don't you give me this one? Sign that one. This is Mike is still on. Sure that my signature's on all three before you roll them.
Sign the Mylar.
Sign that.
I can tell it's your signature because you can read it.
They all tell me it's the nuns.
I can tell.
First through eighth, I consider two.
That one's done too. Thanks. All set, Mr. Curtis.
Thank
Come
you
by,
all for your time.
Come by tomorrow and see Hillary.
Okay, I will.
Thanks,
Thank
and
you very much.
good luck with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda, Bob, is the lot release, Overlook Drive, Mainstone Road. What do I do with that? Right here. Good evening, Bob.
Good evening. Bob Jackowitz, 7 Prentice Street. Yeah, for the estate of Mara Dash, had requested a lot release, went to town council. Believe he rewrote the document, which is fine with us. And I believe that the buyer's attorney also wrote to the board saying it was fine with him. So we'd all be grateful if it was fine with you.
Right. We have the certificate of release of lots under covenant
Yes.
the same one that you and the other attorney have. We also have a letter dated January 15th from Town Council.
Mr. Chairman, I searched through that material from Town Council, and he references the prototype lot release that he wrote as his recommended rewrite. I could not, he said it was attached, I did not find it. So it may be in some people's packets, well, you got it mailed to. We're only the planning board, we don't get treated as well.
I have it here, was in, maybe it just made it to my pile.
Okay.
Is that the same case with you, Phil, and Jesse?
No, I have it.
Okay, it was definitely not attached to the letter. I mean, because I went back and went through this whole section, page by page, looking for it.
Did
So
you
I
want,
will, if you, I do not have to see it. If town council thinks it's good, the applicant has said it's, they're okay with it, they have signed it, and members of the rest of the planning board have seen it, I'm okay. I just wanted to make sure we knew what it was that Aldo wanted, because it was definitely different from what was in our packet provided by the applicant.
any other questions or comments? Mr. James?
I don't think my question specifically affects what you're asking for, but these lots were all set up under a approved subdivision, which was never built. So,
Portions of it were built. The portion that this lot is in was never built.
that answers my question, okay.
One of the reasons I believe that this portion of the subdivision was never built was because of the
Topography.
topography. The grades are very steep.
So, Overlook was part of the subdivision?
My understanding, yeah.
Okay. I wonder if at some point in time, we ought to just release all those lots so that we don't go through this every time somebody comes through with one. I mean, they haven't built the subdivision. I assume they could not now under the approval.
That's an interesting question because several years ago, there was a request before the board to, I think, put a house on one of those lots. And the neighbors down on Boston Road, on Framingham Road, objected. And it never went forward. So is it better to release them, or is it better not to? It's a good question. Perhaps we'll give that as a homework assignment to the new town planner
There you go.
at some point. So, all set, Mr. Stein, Mrs. Bartolini?
Okay. I just have, it relates more to what Phil was just recommending in the homework. In this case, what's being released is unbuildable.
That's my understanding, yes.
Are all of the lots remaining that were not built because they were unbuildable also due to site constraints?
Part of the homework assignment.
All right, because, I mean, it doesn't make sense. If you're releasing them, then the Framingham Road abutters shouldn't be upset if they're just getting guaranteed open space behind them. And they're being identified as unbuildable. And they apparently are unbuildable because that's the reason being given, that over this history, no one's ever, there's certainly been demand for housing up there. There's lovely homes. Okay.
So,
Ready for a motion, I take it?
yeah, Mrs. Bartolini, motion for the certificate of release.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Southborough Planning Board release the lots as requested and agreed to in the certificate of release of lots under covenant for Overlook Drive and Mainstone Road.
Should identify the two lots. They're
Lots 32 and 33. So
Lots 32 and 33. Do I have a second?
second? Sorry.
Could you put your mic on, Phil, and then say second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, 4-0. Thanks. Bob, we're going to sign this, and then it has to be notarized. So, did you talk to Hillary about that?
she said it wouldn't be available tonight, that's all she said, so.
It'll be available tomorrow
Tomorrow, okay.
at some point. You might want to call first.
All right, I will do that.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Could you say that again, Phil?
That release calls for the signature of one member of the planning board, and that should be done in front of the notary.
And I will do that tomorrow, if that's okay with the board. Very good. Mike?
Before we go to the next item on the agenda, which will be Chapter 40, the Chapter 40B project, I'd just like to, I will be recusing myself, so I would like to request that the approval of the minutes for the Wednesday, January 6th meeting be tabled. I'd like to rewrite them. Certainly, the part dealing with my recusing myself at that meeting doesn't meet the minimum standards the Ethics Commission gave me for the minutes. And the A&R doesn't have any discussion whatsoever. It just says a motion was made. So your minutes must include discussion. So I have my minutes, my notes rather, from that meeting, and I will rewrite where I think we're missing things. I'm sure it's the last thing she did as she was running out the door. So if we can agree that in my absence, we won't vote Wednesday, January 6th, I am going to wish you all a happy evening.
Actually, I have a question about that. Are you coming back for, there's an 8:15 agenda item,
Yes, I'm not coming back.
so,
I have requested several times that, given the situation, that I will always be unavailable for 40B, that it be the last item on the agenda so that I could cover everything I can and then leave. And I'm leaving tonight. Maybe
So,
we'll get it the
can
next
we,
day. That'll get me.
before Kathy, I mean, do we need Kathy to approve December 7 minutes? So we can just knock that off?
You can do that without me. I mean, you've got a
Okay.
quorum. You've got a quorum. You can handle everything. If for some reason someone else had not, you hadn't come back from your recusal, I would have stayed and come back. But everything else on the agenda, I've already told the chair where I stand. I'm, in other words, I'm fine with a salary adjustment and that kind of stuff, so you don't really need me here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You gonna go home and watch this on TV?
Well, I'm gonna have TV on. That's all I commit to.
Not watching the Patriots, that's for sure.
No. It's too bad. I don't have to actually physically be out of here.
I just put it on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is a discussion, Park Central 40B review. I asked to have this put on the agenda, and probably will unless the board objects, for the future meetings, so that we have an opportunity to update ourselves on any items relative to our 40B review. As you know, the planning board submitted a letter dated January 4th with our comments based on the materials that had been received by that date. There's been an additional item. Well, I went to the ZBA meeting the other night, last week, and there were letters submitted to the ZBA from the neighbors, some of the neighbors. And those were, from what I could tell, acknowledged by the ZBA. But I don't recall any of the contents of the letters being discussed. And then today we received, there was another document that was received by the ZBA, and I'm trying to find it.
Donna, you're referring to the email with the ANRAD review, this?
Is that dated this morning?
Yep.
Yes.
You want it?
Why don't you speak to that then, if you got it in front of you? Just tell us what it is and. when-
Well, this is an email from Christopher M. Lucas, manager of Lucas Environmental. And I'll just read it. Good evening. And this is to Hillary and Karen Finelli. Good evening. We have completed our review of the revised plans for the Park Central and RAD. Our comments are attached. Please let me know if you have any questions. We note several suggested facts of findings in relation to several streams and vernal pools that were not delineated. We had requested data forms and all buffer zones for all resource areas. However, they were not submitted or shown for local wetlands. The stream to the north was also not surveyed. That's highlighted in bold on the note here.
I just found it, yeah. So, that was given to the planning department today and found its way to our table tonight. So I put that on, we have this on our agenda so that if there's any additional comments that the planning board members have, or any members of the public, we can listen to them and have the public and the ZBA be aware of any new items of interest. Anything from you, Mr. Jenks?
Yes, I'm looking for the letter from Mr. DePietri responding to the planning board letter. I'm confused in the documentation about which project he's talking about. And I think it just goes to the need to keep these projects separate. The comment I remember he made was that the site plan review was handled in the use variance by the zoning board, and he was not planning to submit a site plan review application. I'm assuming, thank you, mine has my notes on it. I'm assuming that he's referring to the 40B on that, but then later in his letter, got very confusing to me and sounded like he was referring to the whole site. Is made a little bit more difficult, as I understand the whole project, both the 40B and the 40A are going to be referred to as the residences at Park Central. But this board's main concern is the 40A part of that. Because the 40B regulations say the zoning board is in the driver's seat on the 40B part. And I guess I would just like to request that wherever possible, we try to separate the two so we know which part of the overall project we're talking about.
Anything else, Mr. Stein?
I mean, I guess it's all well and good that we're supplied with all these letters, and I mean, I certainly share all these concerns that are being brought to our attention. But Don, I mean, realistically, this is just here in front of us for purely informational purposes, and we don't play a role in the majority of the matters raised in these letters. Is that fair to say, under the 40B regulation?
Mr. Jenks?
It's my understanding that the 40A portion of the overall project, that is the townhouses, is not in front of this board yet.
That's correct. We're only commenting on the 40B, and we do have, you know, copies of the letters and other information reports that they're sharing with us, and we're able to look at them, and as you say, if it's related to the 40B project, there's opportunities for us to provide additional comments. I believe at the ZBA meeting last week, it was stated that I believe the public hearing was continued to February 20th. Does that sound right? 24th. It was. The public hearing was continued to February 24th, but the approval period was extended to the end of March, some date at the end of March. But it was also stated that part of the discussion had to do with Flag Road, the traffic on Flag Road and the mitigation. There was quite a bit of discussion on that from the consultants and the peer review. And it was stated by the ZBA that they were planning to, that the Board of Selectmen had jurisdiction on Flag Road, and that they were going to be meeting with the Board of Selectmen. There's an agenda item for them to meet with the Board of Selectmen to discuss, I think, what they're calling improvements to Flag Road to accommodate the additional traffic. And included in that discussion, I believe, was the removal of, I think it was up to 35 trees, which, since I've been on the planning board, I've never considered those to be improvements. But it was never mentioned that trees on existing ways in the town is handled by the planning board. Planning board holds a hearing along with the tree warden to discuss the removal of any public trees. There is a provision, I believe, that if the tree is diseased, dead, dying, or a safety hazard, that the tree warden has the authority to not have a public hearing and have the trees removed that way. So that was never brought up you know, the planning board's jurisdiction over the tree hearings for the removal of trees was never brought up. And I'm sure it will be when they meet with the selectmen. And I'm wondering if the planning board would feel that someone from the planning board, or all of us, would attend that selectmen's meeting also, so that it's well understood as to if the project does have physical impacts to the Flag Road, and even mentioned Lover's Lane, that it's understood who has jurisdiction over the stone walls, the trees, which trees. They did identify the trees over, I think it was up to a mile away from the site, that were potential targets for improvement. So I feel as though someone from the planning board should be at that selectmen's meeting, and certainly listen. If 3 or more of us attend, then we'll just post it. Your feelings, Mr. Stein?
Yeah, when is that?
February 2nd? No. What do I know? Just on the board here. When did they move it? It's moved to when?
The 16th of February.
February 16th is the next selectmen's meeting?
That's the selectmen's meeting where they're going to discuss.
With the, okay, thank you.
I think, you know, what I wanted to convey is that I take all of these comments, concerns by the abutters very seriously. I take them to heart, and I feel, you know, very much the same way in many of the points that I've read, but I'm frustrated by, you know, the 40B regulation and the fact that we don't have, at the moment, the ability to action some of these things.
Mr. Jenks, you all set for now? Part of the, this is a agenda item. It's a discussion. It's not a public hearing or anything. So if anybody from the public wants to make a comment or ask questions. Yes, ma'am.
Want me to stand up?
Oh, well, come to a mic. Or
Wendy DeMichaelis, 15 Bantry Road. I certainly appreciate all the attention that the planning board has given this process. I have 2 things I guess I'd like to add based on the discussion this evening. One is, I don't understand why, if the town regulations state that planning board has jurisdiction over this one small piece of this whole puzzle, why you would not have already have received an invitation to that meeting as well. I know you probably can't answer that question, but I find it a little frustrating. It doesn't make sense to me from a process standpoint. Like, how could that be overlooked by the Board of Selectmen or, I don't know, whoever sets the agenda for these meetings, the town administrator? I don't know. That just doesn't make sense. And then my second point is, I guess I'm just concerned that there is so much confusion between the 40B and the 40A portion, and who has jurisdiction over what, and how is it different for the two, and no, they have to be separate, but sometimes they're together, that the process is going to get too far forward, combined with the approvals of the 40B, that the process for the 40A will be inhibited. And, you know, I signed an agreement, this is with Mr. DePietri, to put the project forward as it is, and I'm comfortable with that. But, you know, I've been very clear that I just want it permitted properly. And I want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. This is a huge project with major implications for the town, and I want to make sure it's done properly. And I'm just worried that with the way the process is going, that that's not going to be accomplished. I guess neither of those things are questions.
Mr. Jenks.
Thank you. Let me assure you that our goal is to make sure this total project is reviewed and regulated appropriately. There are some things we need to work on to make that happen, and we are attempting to do that. The use variance granted by the zoning board conditions that would effectively revise the regulations and extend the zoning board's control over the 40B project to the 40A project also. We think that was an overreaching on the part of the zoning board, and are looking at options.
Good evening.
Good evening. Howard Rose, 2 Bantry. As Mr. Michaelis, thank you for your diligence. Mr. Stein, I would ask, we share our frustration, but please don't give up. Please, if you can make that next meeting, please join us. There are some concerns with this project. Traffic is still one of them. By losing this process and the due diligence, things like our school system are seriously at jeopardy, the things that make our town our town. And I'm worried that while we're worrying about how we get this, it's still marching forward. We're in MIPA now. If this gets going, how much farther can it go before we can't pull it back? The use variance that was given for this 40A had no consideration for anything except a use variance. Now when he didn't get 158 units, he made it 134, but he made them all in 3 bedrooms, so he made his profit, but that didn't take into account how many more students we're gonna get and what's that gonna do to our school system. No one's done the checks and balances.
Mr. Rose, I think your comments are fine. I just want to make sure that the agenda item here is the Park Central 40B review.
I understand, I'm sorry.
And I think we're still in bounds by talking about the 40B review and allowed to go and talk about those things that should not be part of the 40B review, but they're part of something else, which we're stating here is a 40A.
So the comments are valid. I don't want to go too far into it. We've been down this road. That's not tonight. I'm going to ask you to thank you for your time, but please don't stop. Our town deserves better and deserves to have this done properly. I am for this project, but I need to have it done properly and done in a scope that is appropriate for our town.
By no means was I indicating any giving up or shifting of priorities.
I appreciate that.
Simply more in line with what Mr. Jenks just so eloquently stated, that there's a little bit of a jam with the way that this has been set up, and we're looking at options.
Okay.
So
I just hope we don't run out of time before we get our options straight. So, and I don't know how you can reverse it. Is there a way to reverse it once that comes down? I guess that's for someone else to figure out at that point.
I think that's all under the next agenda item, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Around.
Good evening.
Good evening. So it's Elizabeth Whitney, 23 Blackthorn Drive. I would echo Mr. Rose's comments in terms of thanking you for your efforts on the behalf of the town. I believe that we're all impacted, and I think many of the concerns are related to traffic. Actually, not traffic, it's really safety. And so we have traffic studies, but the main focus of those of us with children that walk to school on those roads, there are kids riding their bikes, there are blind corners. I think the safety of the people that use those roads are a major concern. And again, it's not the road capacity, although the road capacity is obviously lacking in terms of those large trees, but when you then add young children, teenagers that aren't really paying attention, it's still a major concern. So those are just comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a discussion of independent counsel. Did you want to start on this, Mr. Jenks? You want me to give an update? At the last meeting, this was on our agenda at the last meeting, and I believe the board expressed its desire to have an independent counsel give the planning board some guidance relative to the conditions, or at least one of the conditions within the use variance, which we believe was an overreaching into the planning board's authority. So I will tell you that I've looked at the budget, our budget for this year. We do have authority to use our funding for this purpose. No one has indicated otherwise. We're an elected board, not appointed. We did stand before, our budget stood on its own merits at the town meeting and was approved. And the planning board does have the authority to make adjustments within reason within that budget. Fortunately, as this need has arisen, we've also, it coincides with funding in our budget that we had planned for our staff, but due to illness and now the leaving of the town planner, there will be additional funding that will be available for independent counsel. And I believe, I haven't done the final numbers to show the board, but I believe that there's sufficient funding right away to launch on an independent counsel. I'll also say that earlier today I had a conversation with John Rooney, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and he and I discussed this, and we both were in agreement that we needed to make sure that the level of authority that the selectmen had relative to the planning board using its budget and the level of authority that the planning board has relative to the use of its budget. So basically, Mr. Rooney agreed that he would look into a clear answer as to whether or not the selectmen have the authority to either approve or attempt to disapprove the planning board's use of its budget without their permission. We agreed that we wanted to make sure that we were following all the right rules. And when we finished that discussion, he indicated that he would try to get that answer before the end of this week. Because this really, as the neighbors have stated, this thing's moving along, and if it's not moving along in the right direction relative to the overreaching of, perceived overreaching of the ZBA into the planning board's jurisdiction, then we should get into this and get it resolved. And if the independent counsel agrees with the actions of the ZBA, and then I believe the planning board would just back off and respect the work that's already been approved relative to the use variance. Anything else? So it's moving, but slowly, and hopefully in the right direction. Mr. Jenks.
I would just point out that we don't have the 40A portion of the project. The townhouse portion has not been presented to the board yet. So we're really we're not in a position to do much on it. I think that's dependent on the comprehensive permit, the 40B, because the use variance was made subject to that approval. So they can't really bring it to us. I think they can't bring it to us until the zoning board has granted the comprehensive permit.
Wendy DeMichaelis, 15 Bantry. Just a question. So the MEPA process has already begun with the state, and that, from what I understand from the last ZBA meeting, encompasses the entire project, including what will potentially be built on the front commercial sites, which I think is a hotel and an assisted living. So I guess maybe if you know the answer, you could explain how that process could move forward and close for the overall site while the town process has to, by nature of the process, has to be behind. So you have to, they have to approve the comprehensive permit before the town can really start looking at the townhouses.
That was because the zoning board made that a condition of the use variance. So, because it's a, I didn't say that very clearly. The zoning board made the use variance conditional upon the granting of the comprehensive permit. So, up until the comprehensive permit is granted, the terms of the use variance are not applicable.
Right, but everything else can go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different process because it's state, and I'm
So if-
assuming because they've done it that way, they've checked that out and know they can go ahead.
All right. Okay, so would the MEPA filing have to be redone if something changed on the plan for either the townhouses or the hotel and assisted living?
I don't know the answer. I would assume it could, if it needed to be, it could be amended.
Okay,
I don't think they'd make them
Redo the whole thing.
process,
okay,
but I'm not 100% sure of that.
okay, thank you.
I think that this really illustrates the benefit of having special counsel, because we will have the clarification to a lot of unanswered questions, certainly in my mind, that would just really kind of level the whole playing field for everybody.
Should be understood also that the planning board is requesting the independent counsel for the reasons that Mr. Jenks cited at our last meeting, which is that town council is directly advising the ZBA, and it would probably be inappropriate for, or it would probably be more appropriate for independent counsel to guide the planning board with no, at the same time, planning board showing full respect to town council. Mr. Rose.
I think what we just heard is the perfect example of the frustration we're feeling. It appears that from our side, that the ZBA with perhaps town council and the developer with the MEPA filing are plowing forward, this is a done deal. And I'm incredibly concerned, once it's done and approved by the state, to then go back and have to redo that is going to be next to impossible. Because if we try to reduce it, there's a chicken and an egg thing happening here, and we're somewhere caught in the middle. So I think you're exactly right that, and again, share our frustration is we don't think the process is being done. So anything we can do to expedite this, to get it done properly, is not only better for the project, the town, it's better for everyone to have it smoother and moving faster. Because the other side of this, we want it done, right? We're going to be sitting in a construction site for 4 years. The sooner we can get it done properly and a project that is appropriate for the town, the sooner we can get this done, we can all move on to something better. So.
If there's nothing else, before we go on to the next agenda item, I'll ask a question. You know, these two items, this current agenda item, the discussion of the independent council, and the previous one, discussion Park Central 40B. Does anyone here feel as though, does anyone here feel that we went beyond those agenda items? They're intended to be not that restrictive so that we can have an open and free discussion in those areas. I know we talked about the 40A, but it was in relation to the 40B. We talked about independent counsel, and it was in relation to the actions of the ZBA. Is there anyone here that feels that that we went beyond these agenda items? I don't, but I'd like to hear if anybody feels that way. Mr. Jenks.
I would just point out that we didn't really talk about elements of the project. We talked about the administrative structure around the project, so I don't think that's an issue.
Very good. Thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay. Next item on the agenda is the salary adjustment for the administrative assistant. The administrative assistant, Hillary, is now working with myself and one of the seniors. This will be our second full week without a full-time town planner, and this has happened before, a couple of years ago, and at that time, it's appropriate that the administrative assistant get a modest increase in her salary to cover the additional duties and responsibilities that she'll be taking on. And that's a 10% bump in her current rate. And what we did the last time this happened, about 3 years ago, the planning board voted to approve that salary increase. We do have the funds in our budget to do that, and again, it was done before. It's in accordance with the guidance that I've received from, you know, the town administrator and staff. So if there's no discussion, we can just have a motion, or we can have a discussion on that. Mr. Jenks.
Do discussion? I don't have discussion. I was going to make a motion. Mr. Chairman, I will move that we grant a 10%, is it a 10% increase in the current salary to the administrative assistant, retroactive a week to when she started the covering for the town planner who has left.
Right, that started, last day of the town planner was the 15th. The 18th, I think, was Martin Luther King Day, so it was, the 19th was Hillary's first day back. So that would be the day that the retroactive would start, which was last Tuesday.
I just thought of a discussion point. I'll second it, but.
Motion's been made and seconded, discussion.
So,
Mrs. Stein.
yeah, we have a public hearing for warrant articles on the 8th. That's the next meeting. So I haven't had a chance to catch up with Hillary yet. I think I'm presenting the solar bylaw. I need some preparation for that. Is she available? And who's going to be coordinating the setup of the public hearing and the presentation and such?
First step would be to go and see Hillary And she will guide you toward the right person and resources to make that happen. I'm in here almost every day now, which is kind of the way we did it the last time the town planner left. I just want to make sure that Hillary has all the resources that she needs to keep the things moving. She has great experience in the planning department, and also great experience during these times when we have a gap between town planners. So I'll be glad to help you with that too, Jesse, if you want. There's people in the building that I think will be doing other presentations for town meeting, and they'll share with you, the computer, the software, the projector, and all that stuff. Good? Motion was made and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? 3-0 for the salary adjustment. Next item, next item on the agenda, other business properly before the board, the planner's report. We have those, well, okay, it's minutes. Central. I just want to talk about the upcoming agendas. Yeah, this is the notice of the public hearing, which will be February 8th, to cover the large-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems, solar district overlay, and revising and use regulations, deleting the words owned by a public or a nonprofit community housing organization. We'll get into the details when we get closer to that. And then all of this material relative to these are at the planning department. So our next agenda, our next meeting is February 8th. That agenda's been posted, but I think it's going to be revised a little bit. First item is the 0 Furman Ave request for an extension. The next item is the solar warrant article. Next one is the public hearing for to remove that language relative to nonprofit ownership. That's February 8th. And then February 22nd, we have, this agenda has not been posted, it's a draft. Public hearing, St. Mark's School, solar energy array. There'll be a public hearing for the road acceptances, William Caleri Lane and Reservoir View Estates, and also Fox Hill Drive at Parkerville Heights.
I will not be here for the 22nd.
Jesse, you gonna be around? And then, March 7th is the one after that. Public hearing, this is again a draft, hasn't been posted, could change. Site plan review, 6 to 8 Turnpike Road. There's a project being submitted for that site. We also received just 2 more items. We received a Town of Westboro There's a warrant article being proposed in Westboro, Springtown meeting. Use. It has to do with revising I think it's an overlay district in the area of the former state hospital site. Free to look at that. And then Hillary prepared a draft for the annual town report, our annual report for that. That was on the table, and if there's no objections, then we're going to submit this to...
Mr. Chairman, my name was misspelled.
So do you want that changed?
That would be preferable. I've illustrated the.
Oh, I missed that. So we told Maureen downstairs, she's the collector of these reports for the town annual town report, and said that we would have it submitted tomorrow morning. So if you want to read it through, and if you have any other recommendations or changes, just give me a call or before we leave tonight. And otherwise, we'll be submitting it with the proper spelling tomorrow, which I believe is on time. There's nothing else on the planner's report. Mr. Stein.
At the last meeting, it was Jennifer's last meeting, and I had indicated that I was concerned about a posting on the town planning website regarding the over 55 units allowed as being, I'm concerned about how those numbers were derived, and she had indicated she was going to have the assessor explain that. Has there been any progress on that?
Yeah, there has. That was one of my things that I was supposed to tell you tonight. And you can probably get a clearer answer from her tomorrow morning. But I believe she told me today that those numbers were from the assessor's office as of the end of December. So they're very fresh numbers.
I think what I was looking for was something from the assessor in writing explaining the numbers.
She may have that.
She meaning Hillary?
Yeah.
Okay.
She indicated to me that she completed that request that you had made at the last meeting. And she verbally told me what I just said, basically. But she may have more information on it. It was later this afternoon, and she was kind of going out the door, and I was doing some other things. But she was good enough to do that, and then asked me to tell you that. Anything else on the planner's report? The only other thing we have is the minutes, December 7th. I think she asked to hold the January one. January 6th, yeah, not, I don't think she commented on the December 7th. The ones that we have with us say revised draft, so the original were already commented on and adjusted, right? Thanks, Destiny. But if the board chooses to move them to the next meeting, that's what we'll do.
I mean, I've reviewed them, I'm fine with them, but I'm fine either way.
They're not that old, so we'll go to the next meeting. Make sure they're right for everyone. Anything else? Terry, you want to do another room shot? We did have 2 people here before, a minute ago. Before that, I think it was up to 5. But right now, what we have is what you see.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Jenks,
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye, very good. Good night.